Alright everyone, no stream today, busy doing a bunch of other meaningless garbage, but big patch notes dropped, patch for 12.5, which launches tomorrow. So, want to cover a couple things on this. First off, we're going to be stuck on this patch for 4 weeks. There will not be a new patch in 2 weeks. Odds are there will be a B patch in a week, mostly because they're changing a lot of stuff, so there might be some tweaking that needs to be done in case something big comes up. But in general, 12.5 will last us for a week. Maybe we get B patched, and then we're not going to see another patch for another 3 weeks. That's where we are. So this is a patch we basically have for the rest of March. All right. Minor change. I know they call this a large change. This is kind of a minor change to Toma traits. They're basically rebalancing it because it was a little too easy to get the two tailored emblems. I think that was probably the biggest issue. Was getting up to two tailored emblems was a little bit too easy. And 4 made it a little too valuable in the late game. So they're just retoning this. I think this is fine. Also, getting 5 was really easy to get a quick one tailored, and that would give you basically a 1 in 5 chance of getting the the emblem you wanted, plus the other 3 random ones that could show up that could also be the one you wanted. So this is probably a good change. Actually, like theoretically, you could get it so that way the one was always the one you want. This was very manipulatable, is what I'm getting at here. Augment changes. There are a bunch, so I'm only going to cover the few that are kind of notable. Battle Mage. This I think was probably a brawler nerf. Um, the AP bonus is what really makes Battle Mage, and you can do some pretty crazy things with a handful of the units in the game right now with it. Chemtech Unity. In general, the Unity traits were kind of too good. They're very good. Very, very good. Most of them probably should have been at gold. Some of them maybe even prismatic. I think we could make an argument that Challenger might have needed to be a prismatic, but that might have been a bit too much. Concussive blows. Yeah, that's the brawler one that's stun. It's one. It makes things stun. I forget. It makes it adds like a stun to spells or your first attack. Yeah, it was not a silver trait. Cybernetic 3 added way too much health. Disintegrator. I'm not sure Disintegrator really needed this nerf, but Brawler was very effective, and Disintegrator is very good against Brawler, so it got toned down. Double Trouble was. There were a handful of Double Trouble comps that were pretty good. In general, these numbers were just kind of obscene, so they got toned down. Electrostatic Charge did a bit too much damage. It was a very. It was also kind of crazy in the early game. It did kind of need a nerf. 4 score, give you an extra 4 costs. The problem with 3 was that you either wouldn't get a pair of 4 costs, so you would. The main reason you would take this was because you either A, wanted to get your carry, or 2, wanted to get 2 of a 4 cost. That was pretty much the main use of it. Also, 12 gold's pretty nice. Well, it was only, yeah, 12 gold. 12 gold is nice. I think in general, not having upping this up for the 16 gold and giving you a better chance of actually having a pair of 4 costs makes it a lot stronger when you compare it to the other augments at that time. Yeah. All right. Future side bounce duration go 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Golden egg. Why is it golden egg? Yeah, this is just ordered awkwardly. But the point here to make Future Sight 2 and Mistral or the Radiant Zephyr are really good. Particularly Future Sight 2. My understanding is that Future Sight 2 at Challenger is like a 90% win rate. Like, that's almost an always win, which is terrifying to me. I'm surprised they just haven't gotten rid of this and just made Future Sight a prismatic because of how effective it is. It might be that's a little too weak at like gold and platinum level, but at challenger level, Future Sight is obnoxious. Uh, Max health burn on Radiant Sunfire Cape reduced. Yeah. Um, for those who didn't know, like the Sunfire Cape, like the Radiant Sunfire Cape basically always kills. It just does it over a slow period of time. So they toned it down. Luden's does a shitload of damage and has been toned down. Fair enough. High Five is new prismatic they added. My understanding is that this was in PBE for like a day and people thought it was absolutely cracked. So they got rid of it, and now they've brought it back because they realized a lot of their augments were absolutely cracked. So I'm not surprised to see this come back. It also is sometimes a big whiff. A lot of times, if you're looking for it, like when you pick this, you almost always want to try to get pairs of some 5 cost, but it sometimes will give you pairs of a 5 cost you really don't care for instead of the ones you're actually looking to carry. Zhonya's Paradox is not very strong, so they buffed it. Second Wind 3 removed because it added infinity health. Triforce bonus health was reduced. Yeah, the particularly obnoxious part was the 233. Like, this was a lot of health in the early game. Yeah, this was just like too much health for people who got like an early 3 cost. Also, Triforce will now only be offered if you have 2 or more 3 costs in play. That's an interesting change. That basically makes it almost impossible to get into play at the early game. You can, but it's going to be like very rare situations where that's going to be one of your first augments. It's almost never going to come up on your first augment, but I guess theoretically it could. Trait changes. Bodyguard. Bodyguard not good. Make Bodyguard better. Pretty simple stuff there. Enchanter. This one's an interesting one because individually, a lot of the Enchanter champions are actually pretty good, but the trait itself, like, really isn't doing much. I think a lot of it is that these numbers in the previous set were balanced basically to Janna, because Janna did most of the healing in Enchanter. So now that Janna isn't there, they can afford to buff some of these numbers up, which I guess is okay. Same thing with the magic resistance, which there could use a little bit more of. Enforcer is unfun, so they're nerfed to Enforcer duration. Hex Tech. So Hex Tech across the board was kind of a problem last patch. The shielding numbers they had were too high. Most of the champions were way too good. Now they've kind of toned down all the champions, and Hextech is kind of, as a trait, pretty terrible. So they're buffing up the base shield without touching any of the champions anymore. I don't think any of the champions are getting significantly touched in this patch. Innovator Dragon, Dragon's War no longer deals 5% crit strike. Instead, we will always crit fatal to. Okay, this is a lot of words. I'm going to explain exactly what's happening here. This particular 75% crit chance made it so that IE was pretty much always backline Jace's best item. 100% of the time. It was just almost always his best item because it made this crit chance go up to 100. So now what they're doing, my understanding is, they're always going to give the crit strike off this roar. So on the roar, you now always do crits. But somehow there's some balancing here that makes it so that this makes sense. I don't really understand it myself because if you read the rest of this, the dragon is also getting buffed. In honesty, dragon was a tiny bit weak. After some of the nerfs they gave him on the last major patch they put up. But the explanation of this is basically that they want Jace to be buildable with as a backline carry without IE. Not saying IE is a bad item on him. There's just now probably better builds. All right, tier 1 changes. So Brand is getting a buff. I'm gonna like point this out. Brand is actually pretty good. I don't think he's like an end game reroll carry that you just like reroll now and he's one of the best units in the game. I've had good experience with VIP Brand. VIP Brand, you give him a jewel gauntlet, and he's actually probably good. He just takes off. He's actually incredibly strong. But Riot doesn't see it that way. Maybe they actually want him to be a late game reroll carry. So you just reroll and you get to level 5 and he just pops off still. I don't know. In general, the Debonair trait's not particularly good. It's just awkward to play. I should change that. The Debonair trait itself doesn't really do that much outside of granting the VIP bonus. So as a trait, it's not really adding anything that's unique. It's just like a stat boost. So a lot of the champions within it aren't very good. There's some work that needs to be done in Debonair, and I believe that they're going to be getting to that in the next major patch. Jarvan, they're nerfing his attack speed because Jarvan was doing degenerate things. Jarvan was without a doubt the best one cost in the game. Nocturne, this is a rebalance to make it so that these numbers actually make sense. So if you go from 2-star to 3-star, that's actually a lower DPS on the spell, which is awkward. And this is kind of what happens when you have something that's a stun that does damage over time, that you can get these things where this looks better going from here to here, 2-star to 3-star, but it's actually not. So, got a buff. Twitch scaling, I believe they toned down 3-star. Yeah. Oh, they turned down 2-star as well. Base AD on Twitch is high. Like, really high. You don't really notice it until you start playing a lot of the Twitch reroll builds, but his base AD is pretty high. So they toned it down. It was really strong in hyper roll, I believe, where you would normally see someone do this, yeah. Tier 2 units, Ashe is getting a buff. Yeah, no one played Ashe, which is unfortunate because Ashe is meant to be like the premier 2-cost carry, and she wasn't. So she's getting just a buff, straight up buff. The volleys are becoming standardized, and they're increasing her range to +1 on the volley. So not her auto, but her volley. Got it. Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai's base spell damage no longer scales with AP. Yeah, Rek'Sai needed a rework. It's interesting because Trundle had the same issues, but he was stealing AD. And before he was stealing like all the stats. Now we have Rek'Sai, who she is stealing the armor and magic resist, and yeah, she was busted. So they're turning her down so that she still does the steal, but it doesn't. The damage doesn't scale with AP. Instead, I believe the healing now steals with AP. Yeah, Rek'Sai just like did a bunch of shit. It was kind of crazy, and since there was so much scaling, being a striker, getting more AD, like it was a little much going on there. Ekko gets a mana nerf because every comp wants him. He's just a good unit. He was a good unit. I'm not quite sure why they added Innovator to him because he was a good unit before he had Innovator, and then they added Innovator to him, and like he's way too good now. So they nerfed his starting mana, which it's a good change. Actually, a really good change. Increase range to North Boulder. That's fine. Lucian. Lucian is one of the worst carries I have ever seen. I've played about 2 games where I opened with a Lucian on PvE rounds, and it was ass. It was one of the worst comps I've ever played. I've done it twice, and it just doesn't work. It's awful. And Lucian is supposed to kind of be one of the premier 3-cost carries that you can reroll, and like I don't know why you would because he's ass. So they're giving him additional health, adding some damage to the spell, which that's actually a pretty sizable on the 2-star. Not much on the 3-star though. Interesting. And a little buff to armor and magic resist. I'm hoping he's better now. He really does need to be better. Malthus our nerf. He did too much damage. There's not much else to say. Senna. Oh, this one almost got through. Originally, they weren't going to nerf Senna, but at the last second, they decided to nerf Senna. Senna, very, very good. Senna actually was probably one of the best 3-cost units in the game. Enabled so much. Was incredibly good champion. And if you had a striker emblem and you put it on Senna, she was cracked. She did insane amounts of output here. Yeah, I'm not surprised that this nerf happened, but I was kind of secretly hoping it went under the radar. All right, 4 cost. All right, Ahri needed work. Yeah, we'll start there. Ahri needed work. So Ahri was very difficult to use and didn't really do much anyway. If you had a good optimized Ahri, it still seemed like it didn't really do anything. And you all think just kind of lost before she ramped up to a point where she just kind of murdered everything. So there's a bit of a rework here. To start with, this starting mana is now at 30, so she'll get her first ult off very quick, instantly with, well, actually should go instantly with a Sojourn. Yeah, essentially this makes it so Sojourn is about as good as blue buff. Blue buff should still be better, but like only in a very, very, very optimalized way. If you slam Sojourn on, it's almost as good. Lux kind of had the same issue before. If you put a Sojourn on Lux, it was about as good. I mean, blue buff is better, but it's not better by so much. You should really need to force pulling the blue buff. Secondly, the angle change. I'm gonna have to see what exactly this looks like, but I would think this part here is the most significant buff. The angle the orbs were launched at was a little awkward because it didn't follow the plane correctly. So it wasn't linearly traveling down the hexes. It just shot out at these angles that didn't hit right on a lot of the hexes. This should make that better, even if it is more forced in a specific direction. So you're not going to get as wide a cone, but it's more focused and you'll get like better ults out of it, is what I'm imagining this to look like. But we're going to have to actually see it to understand it. Alistar is getting a damage nerf. There was a build going around called Mad Cow. It was very good. Alistar is not a carry. That was the problem. Alistar is supposed to be a tank, and people were playing Alistar like he was a carry, and holy shit, it was obnoxious. Draven, lots of changes to Draven here. First off, they're increasing his range. This just kind of had to happen. Two, the armor penetration that was in Debonair, they're taking 25% of that out of Debonair and putting it into base Draven. So the idea here is base Draven should be playable. He should be a carry. He really should be. And this kind of gets into one of the issues with Debonair is like, when do you play Debonair? So should you be playing Draven if you don't have VIP Draven? And optimally, the answer to that should be yes. But in that case, then you have to have some other VIP. So who's your other VIP? The only real answer to that is Leona. And having a tank be your VIP is very, very suboptimal in general. So, like, Draven needs to be very close to his VIP, in my opinion. I would hope with this range buff and this change to armor penetration, he is, but we're gonna have to see. Draven working really opens up the current meta. There's just so much more people can actually play besides brawler front lines and innovators. Um, just having Draven be playable will fix a lot of issues in the game right now. Renata, damage nerf. Renata does so much work. Just plain work. Not even damage, just work. And it should be noted that this doesn't sound like much, like 5 damage. Like, what does that do? It's actually quite a bit because of just how often her damage ticks over time. It's... Eh. Sivir, Hextech should be playable. Vi. So, they're nerfing Vi damage here. I've had good experience playing Vi carry. Or I shouldn't really say Vi carry. It was just playing Vi as if she was Riven. That's worked pretty well for me. So I'm not surprised that they're gonna throw some nerfs down. Plus, she kind of like goes all over the battlefield and does a bunch of AOE damage. She actually puts in a lot of work when she like starts running through front lines. Um, hmm. I thought there were some. They might be in the minor changes. For some reason, I thought there were some Aurelia changes, but they might be in the minor section. We'll get to that if there is. Yeah, there's a minor section. Tier 5 units. Galio health scaling up. Not much to talk about there. Kai'Sa attack speed up. What happened to Kai'Sa? When did we stop playing Kai'Sa? Anybody? Tom Kench damage on immune targets up 15%. Yeah, that's an awkward thing when you play Tom Kench, but you're up against Colossus front lines and he doesn't do anything, and you're like, I don't know what to do here. Zeri AD buff. I'm pretty sure Zeri is the worst performing 5 cost right now. Part of it's probably because of Debonair, but I think also like she just doesn't do a lot of damage. It's not that she's bad. It's just that they put so much into her movement that she doesn't do enough damage. And it makes her kind of tricky to play in the end game. Items, big change. Bramble Vest critical strike damage reduction from 100% to 75%. Big change. Bramble was like a must-make item. Like, if you didn't make Bramble, I didn't really know what you were doing. It's 100% the best defensive item in the game. Nearly everyone is focusing on crit damage-based builds. So having a Bramble to reduce that damage was almost necessary 100% of the time. And I'd slam Bramble every single game. So they're toning it down so that IE is actually useful against it. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we see a nerf to IE and just crit damage in general to help balance out the fact that we shouldn't be building Bramble every single game to have a shot at doing anything. They also buff the reflect damage to balance it out, but that's not the big deal. The big deal here is that everyone built it because everyone played IE and was just relying on crit damage. Small changes, augments. You're going to see a bunch of these in the near future where if you're playing some particular augment or if you're playing some particular composition, you never see certain particular augments that just blatantly do not work with what you're playing. So when you have 2 snipers, you won't see Battle Mage. Other changes, Covalent Spark, so the Radiant Ionic Spark, damage reduced. Spark is very good right now, and I don't think a lot of people realize how good Spark is. Brink of Dawn, health threshold raised. Oh, that's right. Radiant, I forgot. This gives you like a double res, if I recall correctly. Golden Gifts is only 2. Knife's Edge can be only... Knife Eggs will no longer be offered when you're playing Scholars, Snipers, Enchanters, Arcanists. So yeah, same thing here. Portable Forge, Collector Gold increased. Swift Justice has been renamed to True Justice. Okay. Treasure Trove can now appear as your first augment. Ooh, that's interesting. Twin Shot damage buff at 3 and 4. Okay, that's meaningful. Ezreal AD nerf, praise the Lord. Innovator is probably the best opener in the game, and anytime you see someone with a two-star Innovator in the early game, it's just like, well, I guess he's top 4 easy. Uh, Innovator is such an easy opener to play. It is incredibly efficient. I'm not surprised to see a nerf to the main carry of early Innovator comps. Corki and Lulu got buff. Lulu's probably the worst champion in the game. Kind of needed a buff. And Corki was like not doing anything. Kind of needed a buff. Morgana. This is an interesting one because they buffed the 1-star and the 2-star, but nerfed the 3-star. I've gotten Morgana 3-star twice, and I wasn't overly impressed, but it's worth noting that Morgana 3-star is really only efficient when the ult actually goes off. And at that point in the time in the game, I often had Morgana 3-star. The ult wouldn't go off because she just took too much damage to do her actual ult. So, at the same time, though, I do agree with these changes. The 1-star and 2-star need a little bit of buff to be better frontline units. Tryndamere spending slash damage reduced. Yeah, he gets on backlines and your entire backline is just dead. I can't explain it. It just kind of happens. So they did nerf Aurelia's AD, yeah. I'm not too surprised. Aurelia's pretty easy to play in a lot of different comps. Jhin curtain call damage scaling, so they buffed Jhin. I'm glad they buffed Jhin, because no one plays him. The only Jhin comp I think I've ever seen recently is the Innovator's comp. And I don't even think that comp's that good. I think just like do your best to see if you can force 7 Innovators. Renamed Kazakh's alt. Jinx getting a little bit more armor magic resist. Just kind of a function of the fact that Jinx is a little more awkward to play now because I'm trying to think. I don't think there's a 4-cost twin shot anymore. So it makes Jinx a little more awkward to play. Item changes. Threshold for stealth is now 60%. That's an interesting change. Static Shiv it probably did need a nerf. There's a lot of like really fast auto attackers or units that have like spells that launch a lot of things that are considered autos for static. So it's not surprising to see this get nerfed. Team chat has been added to double up. Yay to all of you double up players who go in solo. You poor sorry souls. Get some friends. Or maybe you're just trying to get some friends. Who knows? I shouldn't talk badly about you. Bug fixes. Let's see if there's any I really need to talk about. Fix a bug where Tom Kench would still consume and deal damage over time to units affected by unstable concoction without actually consuming and disabling them. Huh. Doesn't this give you CC immune? I guess that's why this is an issue. I'm pretty sure this makes you CC immune. Yeah, I guess that could be a problem. Tom Kench no longer stunned until who would escape his stomach with Edge of Night? Edge of Night can make you just get right out of Tom Kench's stomach. It's like magic. Silco will no longer cast unstable concoction on a target. Man, Tom Kench was really messing shit up. Muzeko, Hextech, Debonair, and Striker trade augments can no longer be offered after picking build different. Yeah, because these are like 2 trade. No, Debonair is not a 2. I guess if you're playing built different, though, you would never play Debonair, so you just don't want it. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. That's right. That makes more sense. Alright. So that's it. Like I said, patch 12.5 will be a 4-week patch. We're not getting a patch in 4 weeks. But we'll be getting a beat patch in a week. So keep an eye out on that. balance wise, I'm fairly happy with a lot of the changes. I still think that there's some work to do, and I think Riot has even kind of mentioned there's still some work to do, particularly on Debonair. Debonair, I think, really needs to be opened up a little more and be a little bit better, and probably needs to be a little more focus on some augment balancing. I think some of the augments are a little too good for their current tier, or just incredibly efficient. I know a lot of people like to talk about econ augments versus combat augments, and that common augments are just generally always better. I I I, I can understand why. It's because a combat augment will lead you to more eco, so that's one way to look at it. But um, there there's still work to do here. I think everyone understands it. So hopefully this patch in particular will be good enough to last us for 4 weeks. Anyway, that's it, everyone. I'll see y'all around. Peace out.